What's your best story that is 100% real, but nobody believes you?
Story 1. My friend got a girl pregnant when he was 13 and the girl was 15. They met at the beach in Panama City, Florida. She was rich and lived in Ohio. He was poor and lived in Georgia. My friend never told anyone but me. He is now 28 and has a 15-year-old kid only I know about. The only reason he got away with it is because this girl's family was super rich. The girl never said who the guy was and would sometimes fly down to visit him in secret. I did not believe this shit until I saw pictures of his kid. His kid has never met him either, and I do not think he even knows he exists. I always daydreamed that if my friend died, I would have to tell his parents that he actually had a kid and they had been a grandma-grandpa for 15 years and never knew it. Story 2. On the way to visit a friend, my husband and I got lost on a highway in Pennsylvania. By some weird chance, my husband's friend drives past us in the opposite direction. We see him and turn around to catch up to him. Finally pulling over, we are standing on the side of the road, two-lane highway, discussing the directions to the friend's house. Surrounding us are farms with corn and other various crops. Out of nowhere, a duck appears on the opposite side of the road. He is looking at us curiously while we are talking. We watch him look both ways and waddle across the road to where we are standing. Cars are honking at him as they attempt to drive past. He gets over to my husband, pecks at his shoe once, and then promptly walks back across the street, dodging cars traveling at highway speed. He made it back across the street and disappeared into the crops. He risked his life to peck my husband's shoe and simply waddled out of our lives. Story 3. How I ended up with my dog. I was on my way to the bus when I saw this dog calmly walking about. He approached me, I petted him a bit, and went on my way. For some reason, he kept on following me. There were other people around us, but he kept on walking behind me. The bus station is by a busy street. I hoped to shake him off by the time I got there, but no. I wasn't sure what would happen if I got on the bus. Would he run after it? Would he hop on the bus? The stop I intended to hop off on is another heavily trafficked place. Neither of the options looked good, so I did the only thing I could think of. I headed home. On the way, I called my dad and told him a dog was following me. He laughed, thinking it was my way of trying to skip school. He went along with it though, promising to drive us to the nearby dog shelter. Imagine his surprise when I come home with a dog. So we drive to the dog shelter, where we have to turn him in. And that, kids, is how I met my dog. This is him. Story 4. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, on a business trip. The night before departure, I wanted a drink, but the lounge of the hotel was closed for a private party. I didn't want to go out of the building alone at that time, so I started talking to one of the private guards. Then, this lady came closer and asked if there are problems. I explained her I was hoping to get a drink, but didn't want to bother. She started talking in a very good English. I can speak enough Portuguese to get by, but am definitely not fluent. And explained me it was a party after a wedding. She was older than me, probably late 40s, but very good looking. She asked me if I wanted to join her upstairs for a drink, and she brought me to her room. We spent 30 minutes banging on every possible surface until she told me she had to go back to the lounge. I asked her why the hurry, and she told me she was the mother of the bride. I felt like in a MasterCard advert. Story 5. When I was about 16, I was in a restaurant in Melbourne with my cousin. I noticed a young guy eating with his family. I said to my cousin, "Haha, hey, look, it's Harry Potter," because of his similarities to Daniel Radcliffe. My cousin replied, that is Harry Potter." It was. He was in Australia, shooting an Aussie film. A bit later, I went to the toilet to pee. Whilst I was at the urinal, Daniel came in and began to pee in the urinal next to me. I looked over at him and we made eye contact and he said, "Nice wand." Finished, washed his hands and walked out. No one has ever believed this, and only my cousin can vouch for the fact that we saw him, but not for what he said in the toilet. Story 6. When I was little, my younger brother and I were always staying with babysitters during the day. This one time, we were with the same babysitter for a few months. As soon as we got to her house, I would hang me and my brother's coat on the coat hangers that were strategically placed right before the basement stairs. My brother was too little to reach the coat hangers, so I would have to hang his for him. Well, one day he got this stubborn idea that he wanted to hang his own coat. I remember being nervous, but I let him try anyway. He picks the hanger that is the closest one possible to the top of the basement stairs. As he is on his tiptoes, struggling to reach the hanger, he all of a sudden falls over and down the basement stairs. The babysitter heard him crying, then accused me of pushing my baby brother down the stairs. She told my mom about it later. To this day, no one believes me that I didn't do it. I would never hurt my little brother. Story 7. Was working at a bar with a girl who he dropped some off, and I and another bartender were invited to go drinking with them after our shift. Ended up going in a limo with Sid and Macho Man and doing tons of drugs on way back to their hotel, where we witnessed Mean Gene Okerlund killing it with some 20-something girls. Best part of the night, and maybe my life, we pulled up to a stoplight and Macho Man, incredibly amped at this point as we all were, sticks half out of the sunroof next to a group of people waiting to cross the light and screams, "Snap into a Slim Jim!" He scared the shit out of about half of them, and then the cheers erupted. I still chuckle about it till this day. Story 8. When I was like 11, I went to this big children's fishing festival where all the kids in attendance got their names put into a hat and then drawn out to determine which guide they were paired with, in groups of 2-3 per guide. Well, lo and behold, my name is first, so my brother and I get to go with the #1 guide there, who happens to be a professional fisherman or something. The guy was the only guide to come with his own cameraman, like an actual cameraman tagged along with us. So apparently this guy, who was very nice and I had a great time with, is a somewhat famous fishing video maker, and my brother and I were filmed every time we reeled in a fish. The guide told us we may make it into one of his videos, or even onto a fishing TV show, but he didn't know for sure. So one day, I'm sitting there watching ESPN on a Sunday morning before church, and no shit, there I am with my little brother catching a big-ass walleye. Of course my parents were getting ready and my brother was in the shower, so no one else saw it. But it was nuts. This was before DVR or anything, and I had no idea it was coming, so I couldn't set up a recording, but I was on ESPN for like 30 seconds. Probably the pinnacle of my fame right there. Story 9. As a child, I can remember standing out on the apartment balcony and watching kangaroos in the distance. My mother used to make homemade clay for me to play with, using flour and some other kitchen materials. I didn't have a bed, slept in a mostly empty room with a few toys, mostly cars and one of those Hot Wheels tracks that go around a loop. I've never been outside the US. My mother claims she's never done this, or even knows how to make clay, and that I've always had a bed. And I'm 100% sure I'm not adopted. Sure enough, those memories are there. Multiple memories of it. Not like some kind of weird, out-of-the-ordinary kind of memory. More like, those were general kind of memories from childhood. Story 10. When I was about 8 years old, my dad and I were throwing the Nerf Whistler football out in the yard. My dad had quite the arm back in the day, So when we got done throwing around, he decided he wanted to send a laser right in the back of his truck from about 30 yards away. Naturally, I began permanent dimple in the side of my face. Lucky for me, though, it hit me square in the jaw, where normal dimples usually are. That is probably the source of why people don't believe me, but that shit happened. Hearing that high-pitched whistle coming directly from my face was absolutely terrifying. Story 11. I was in high school. I'm at a friend's house party. My girlfriend got belligerent drunk. I'm struggling to enjoy myself because I was barely buzzed, and she was being annoying. She won't stop talking about how horny she is. I just want her to pass out, but she's having none of it. Won't take no for an answer. We go upstairs into a bedroom and start hooking up. She throws me onto the floor, gets underdressed like Jim Carrey on Bruce Almighty, and turns off the lights. She rips off my clothes, straddles me, and says, "You're gonna love this shit," as she lowers down. It doesn't even feel good. She's making all these noises like a savage, but there's just too much friction. I wasn't feeling it, and I'm about to tell her to get off of me. She lets out this noise that sounds like a combination of a deep cough and a hiccup. I'm like, "Babe, are you all right?" She lets out a Hurricane Katrina-style levee smasher storm surge of explosive diarrhea all over me. Apparently, we had been doing anal and she lost control. So here I am, covered in Jager bombs, Taco Bell, and oppressive feces, while in my friend's little brother's room. I try to fight off the traumatizing shock which I'm in. Someone needs to clean this shit up quickly. Luckily, everyone else was downstairs. I cleaned myself off with my undershirt and walked into the upstairs bathroom to find cleaning supplies. There was Resolve and Febreze there. I took those to the room and did the old pat down and scrub. Most of it came right up. The carpet was this ugly grayish color, which made things a lot easier. I put my undershirt, and her shirt we used to scrub, in a plastic bag that I found in the bedroom. I popped the screen out of the window and threw it into the backyard. The coast was clear in the bedroom, except this putrid smell of rotten whale blubber. I left the window open and sprayed basically the whole bottle of Febreze everywhere, like I was a hitman cleaner. We walked downstairs. I told my friend that my girlfriend threw up in the room and that he shouldn't let anyone go in there tonight before it airs out. Volcano Ass and I walked outside, got in the car and drove to the street adjacent to his house. I walked in between houses to get to his backyard, hopped his fence and retrieved the bag of deceit, sorrow, and teen anguish. Story 12. So my friends and I are sitting in my apartment, and my buddy Asian Nate, the Asian part is pertinent to the story, but also what we called him, begins telling a story about how he had recently jizzed in his own eye while fapping. Nate is a horrible storyteller. In the middle of his story, my other buddy, Jeremiah, gets up to use the restroom. For context, Asian Nate is sitting in a lazy boy recliner that is in the corner of the living room. The restroom that Jeremiah is visiting is at the opposite end of the room and a few feet down a hallway. If I had to wager, I'd say the door to the restroom was a good 20 feet from the recliner, also pertinent to the story. Nate rambles for long enough that Jeremiah has time to take a leak and wash his hand and step back into the hallway to hear the end of the story. Evidently, Jeremiah's hands were feeling a bit chapped, and he decided to grab the economy-size bottle of Jergens lotion from our bathroom. Yeah, when 4 dudes live in an apartment, the 32 Florida ounces lotion bottle is a good investment. And stand in the hall while applying said lotion to hear the end of Asian Nate's fapping story. Well, I guess Jeremiah lubed his hands up a little more than expected, and just as Asian Nate is delivering the punchline to his jizz in the eye story, Jeremiah loses his grip on the Jergens bottle. The miracle of physics that then took place is hard to do justice. The bottle did a perfect 180-degree inversion landing pump down on the floor. As Asian finally says the words, "And then I jizzed in my own eye," a stream of Jergens lotion is ejected at near light speed and lands some 20 feet away, directly in Asian Nate's eye. If I live to 100, I will never see a more serendipitous series of events. It was magical. Story 13. When I was 8, I was riding bikes with my mom, hit a gravel patch and fell. I don't remember why I didn't have a helmet on, but I hit my head on a rock and was knocked unconscious. I saw and heard two old ladies walking down the street. They came over and stood by me for a little while. When I opened my eyes, my mom was running out from a neighbor's house after calling an ambulance, and the old ladies were gone. 10 people came out to assist me. None of them saw those women. Story 14. I was driving back from a wedding in northern Wisconsin with my ex-girlfriend in the summer of 2010. It was about 10 p.m., so there was no one else on the small highway, and it was actually quite peaceful. Then, I came out of a winding turn and saw a big tan creature on the side of the road. It was way too big to be a cat, and it definitely wasn't a dog. I tapped my girlfriend on the arm and said, Babe, did you see that?" She replied, "No, what was it?" "I think I just saw a mountain lion." She then laughed lightly and said, "Baby, you're just tired. There aren't any mountain lions up here." I kept my eye on the rearview mirror, but it was too dark to see anything. I know I saw a mountain lion, but neither she or her family believed me. A few years later, reports started coming in about more sightings, which makes me believe even more. My best friend and I were behind the group and got in the elevator to go down to the parking garage separately. Atlanta, IKEA. In our elevator, there was a cinnamon roll on the floor. Someone had clearly dropped it recently. The icing wasn't even smudged. My friend dared me to eat a bite. I refused, so she leans over and pulls a piece off the top and eats it. I'm all, "Gross! I'm telling everyone how gross you are!" And the elevator opens and she shouts, "Guys, Nudesy ate a cinnamon roll off the floor." And everyone believes her. This was about 7 years ago, and even now, if I bring it up to her, she claims it was me who are the cinnamon roll. I did not. Story 16. As a primary school student, there was always this wall/climb that everyone would try do next to the oval. And no one could make it, not even the year 6 students. One day, in year 5, I was in such a hurry after leaving class late to talk to teacher, and I didn't want to miss my bus. If I got over the wall, I would just make it in time, so I ran at the wall, jumped, and scrambled up it, reaching a handhold no one had got to before, which allowed me to easily hoist myself over, and I made the bus. No one saw me climb up or jump down, and no one believes I did it. Story 17. When my grandfather died, I didn't go to his funeral because I knew I couldn't handle it. I was pretty young, 8 maybe. A couple of weeks later, I absolutely hated myself and would always say in my mind, I should have gone. At least 5 times a day I said that. Well, my brother and I were playing the Wii, and when I turned around, my grandfather was sitting on one of the chairs in the room smiling. He said, it's okay, everything will be all right." I started to tear up and I said, "Grandpa?" I blinked and he was gone. Story 18. When I was 15 or so, I was outside swinging. Igaff what you think. I love to swing. There was a storm looming at the time, so the playground was completely empty. So I was swinging, la 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 la, and I looked up in the sky. Know what I fucking saw? I saw a fucking flying saucer. Yes, I saw a fucking UFO. I skidded myself to halt and ran out in the field to watch it better. My eyes wasn't fooling me. There was a flying saucer right there. It was about the size of a dime from my vantage point of view. It looked exactly as it did in the 50s sci-fi flicks. It was metallic. It was circular. It had that dome coming out of the bottom center. The only difference between the one I saw and those in the movies was that they didn't fly in a straight line. It was kind of oscillating left and right, kind of surfing through the air. I watched it for a good minute until it disappeared into the clouds. I ran home. My home was only a block away from the playground. I barged into the house and screamed at my dad about what I saw. Fate must have been mocking me at that moment. Do you know why? Everybody to watch the sky with him. At the end, he found out it was only some plane lights. Or something like that. My father looked at me for a moment, then he looked at the episode for a moment, Then he just lost it. He laughed hysterically in my face. I didn't know what to think or do at the moment. I knew how ridiculous this whole thing looked. Then I just lost it. I laughed out loud. I spent the next hour trying to convince my dad that I actually saw an UFO. I really did. I'm not saying that I saw aliens or anything like that. I just know I saw an UFO. It wasn't a fucking weather balloon. I'm dead serious. To this day, I still tell this story to people. Nobody have ever really believed me. Story 19. Walking along one day in the Midwest US, and a thought hit me like a ton of bricks. It seemed to come from somewhere, or somehow other than the way other thoughts randomly enter your consciousness. It hit me so hard that it made me stop dead in my tracks. The thought was a name, Mao Zedong. I shrugged my shoulders and moved on. The next day, I went to a convenience store and saw a newspaper with a huge headline, 3 inches high. Mao dies. With a subheadline, News doesn't reach US for 24 hours. Did some quick math, and the time of the random thought from the day before was about 1 hour after he died. Story 20. When I was 12 years old, I owned a Chihuahua named Taco. We named him this because he looked identical to the famous Taco Bell dog on the commercials. You know, Yo quiero Taco Bell. Anyways, one day at home, Gulf Coast of Florida, I took Taco out for a little walk so he could go to the bathroom. Well, mind you, Chihuahua's legs are so short that if they run away, you can literally go catch them with no problem. So, leashes aren't required. So, back to the story. Taco was minding his business, and as the 12-year-old boy I was, I got distracted by a pair of lizards humping on a nearby tree. I noticed a shadow fly by, and then heard a little yelp. I switched my focus, only to see Taco in the talons of an eagle or hawk flying away into the sunset. I then proceeded to scream, "Taco, no!" But I couldn't do anything about it, so I walked inside and told my mom, and she still doesn't believe me to this day. 8 years later, no one believes me, and I am still missing Taco. Story 21. Once I was at an expo show, and it was kind of late. Everybody was leaving, and me and a couple of friends were hanging out at a bar that was open to where the people walked. All of a sudden, a golf cart goes through at max speed in reverse and is being driven by a street kid, the kind that asks for money at the street lights. He drives this thing into a married couple, and I see the woman Such a big WTF moment! Story 22. In February, I went with a friend on a backpacker trip to India. It was triggered by us not knowing what we wanted in life, so everything was pretty spontaneous and radical. We landed in Bangalore and had a good 2 weeks of traveling until we ended up in tourist-riddled Palolem Beach, Goa, at a cheap bungalow. After 2 weeks, we were supposed to check out so we could move on and travel somewhere else, but the night before that, something happened that changed our plans. We were walking on the beach to a so-called silent party, where everyone has headphones to listen to music because of noise regulations at night. As usual, I was carrying my guitar with me that I had bought there because it was a good way to strike up conversations with people and just jam. We passed by these 2 nice Indian guys who started talking to us. No big deal. They just wanted to chat, right? They ended up inviting us to breakfast the next day. Coincidentally, the same day we were checking out. We agreed because we were already used to talking to strangers, so we didn't think more of it. The next day, we checked out as planned and met them. It would just take an hour or something, we thought. Suddenly, they point to their car and tell us to get in so we could drive to their apartment nearby. I found that a bit weird, as I was thinking we would just go eat at a restaurant or something. But my friend had already gotten into the car, so I decided to think no more of it. After a 10-minute drive or something, we arrived into their apartment. When we got there, we noticed 2 more Indian guys, and the mood quickly changed. We tried socializing with them, but it seemed like they were almost waiting for something. Suddenly, they proposed to us that we could help them smuggle jewelry to Japan, and we would be greatly rewarded. Besides, according to them, it was also a loophole in the regulations which made it legal. This is where my warning signals went sky high. We said we would rather not participate in this scheme of theirs, and we would rather be on our way. That is when things turned kind of ugly. They got very pissed off and told us we had no choice. Then we had to sign a bunch of papers, give them our signatures, let them take pictures of our passports and credit cards. As we did all of this, a bunch of other Indians also arrived, so we were surrounded and didn't know how the hell we were going to get out of this mess. After a bunch of business stuff and meeting a super creepy guy, Dave Grohl look-alike with lots of tattoos and long hair, who seemed to be somewhat in charge of the whole thing, we were put in a car with 3 of them and driven off to a nearby bigger town and checked into shitty motel near the train tracks. We would never be alone, we could never get out of their sight, and we were piss scared at this moment. The next day we woke up to a phone who allegedly was Indian toll customs, who said they had found jewelry on the way to Japan and that we needed to give them the appropriate papers as sign of proof of purchase. This was obviously not Indian police, but the guys who held us wanted us to believe it, and they always insisted that this was a legit thing and the jewelry was real. Oh, and I failed to mention, they showed us the real jewelry made of diamonds and emeralds, and they even let us see them send it. After this, we almost started believing that it was actual police that had called us, and we now thought we were wanted. It's crazy what your mind can do to you when you fear for your life. So now the guys say that we will be waiting for more people involved in this who will help us get out of this mess. We are quite scared now, and we propose that maybe we can sit in the restaurant downstairs to be in public. The guys tell us to relax, and 5 minutes later, at least 5-6 more guys arrive. One guy has a scar, and another one introduces himself as Max, and that he would help us deal with toll customs. We would later find out that Max was a fucking psychopath and had no regard for his own life at all, and would do anything to get what he wanted. At this hotel, we now had to call our banks and try to increase our MasterCard credit limits, and then they would empty our accounts with a card terminal they had brought, probably from one of their fake jewelry companies. I had to go to a nearby internet cafe to log into my net bank, and while I did that, my friend found out that Max was psycho and got threatened by him. He didn't tell me about this until later though, so I didn't know not to mess with him. When I got back from the cafe, I told them that the bank refused to unlock all of my money because of rules, for a good reason, and Max snapped at me. He stared me right into my soul and told me not to lie to him. That is when I found out that he was a psycho. I repeatedly told him that there was nothing I could do except try to get people from home to wire me more money. Eventually, he let it go, and we could move on. After spending the whole day there getting our bank accounts emptied, they put us in a taxi they bought or rented or something, and drove us into the jungle in the middle of the night. This is where we thought we would definitely get murdered and dumped into the jungle. We had heard about tourists going missing in Goa, so I even had my shitty dull pocket knife from Toscana opened and ready to defend myself if the worst should happen. After a long drive with 2 different drivers, who apparently had no driving skill at all and almost got us killed twice on the road, we eventually ended up in Mumbai. They drove us to the airport there, and at the first terminal I had to empty the last of my account and give them the cash right there, surrounded by at least 10 security guards with MP5s. By the way, we didn't want to ask them for help because we legitimately thought there was a chance we were wanted by Indian authorities. As I was going to hand Max the last of my money, I refused and said I didn't want to. This was a bad decision. He just stood there for 5 seconds staring at me before slowly just filling up with rage. I could see him just fueling up and that he was going to snap at me. He blurted out a bunch of words at me and threatened that he would slit my throat before charging towards me. Luckily, the other guy who was with us, who was slightly more reasonable and sane, held him back, but a security guard came up to us and asked us if we were okay. It must have been a weird sight for that guard coming up to me with 100,000 rupees in my hand. Two Indian guys who looked fucking crazy and looked like they were mafia, and me just being able to talk because of the fright. I really wanted to just end it all there and ask for help, but they had told us they would send us on a plane back home, obviously, so we would not be able to report them. So I decided to tell the guard we were okay. He looked at me with a really weird look and told me my money was supposed to be in my pockets. After this incident, we were told to get into a taxi and drive to the other terminal to get on the plane back home. I felt an urge to just stay there, considering I would be sitting next to a psycho who had just told me he would slit my throat. But my friend was still with me, and I couldn't just leave him, so we got into the taxi and drove to the other terminal. At the other terminal, we took an elevator to a more secluded part of the airport, with not much people, and Max told me to give him the money I had refused him earlier. I was a bit reluctant, mostly because I was just scared of him now, so he went into rage mode again before hitting me in the stomach, emptying my pockets and starting to burn the cash. Yes, he was absolutely mental. He said that it was nothing to him and claimed I had offended him by offering him the money right after refusing him it. After the rational guy managed to calm him down again over some time, I ended up giving him the rest of the money, and we managed to get into the terminal and get our tickets. Finally, we were away from those people and had legit tickets back home. We just had to get through the passport check that Max claimed they had bribed for like 500,000 rupees or something. We were still scared of Indian police and we just wanted to contact police back home, but we managed to get through the check without sweating too much. We took the plane from Mumbai and landed in Abu Dhabi, where we scraped together the last of our money to buy ourselves each our Big Mac. Eating beef, after having food poisoning and only eating chicken in India, was a big thing and felt very relieving. We took another plane from Abu Dhabi to Brussels and then home on a small propeller airplane. When we landed back home, we contacted the police at the airport, and after that we have had to be questioned by police for many hours. Whether the bank/insurance will cover the losses is still not decided, but I will find out the next few days. We also had to go meet a psychologist several times to find out if we had post-traumatic stress. Story 23. Late to the party, but here goes. Back in 10th grade, my buddy James and I were hanging out in the ROTC room with one of the cool teachers before classes started for the day. As we get ready to leave, I cracked open a Coke as we're heading out the door to our first period class, and the bitchy teacher across the hall came out in time to see me drinking in the hallway. She proceeded to yell and threaten to write me up for drinking in the hallways, because we all know any food or drink in the halls usually ends up everywhere when it comes to teenagers. James and I laughed at her and blew her off. As I was turning back around, I tripped over my own feet. I could feel her beady eyes boring into the back of my head and knew I was done for. Instinctively, I shot out my hands to catch myself and left my Coke to its own fate. James had turned to see what had happened to me and witnessed everything. Somehow, I managed to not fall on my face, but took 3 massive steps and got my balance back. While doing so, some small part of my mind was screaming, "Save the Coke, fuck your face." In a blur, I threw out my hand 3 times, hitting the Coke can each time, sending it spinning end over end, and snatched it out of the air. Not a drop spilled. I swear I heard their jaws hit the floor with my own. I looked back at snarky teacher, popped a nod at her, took swig of Victory Coke, and kept on walking. James promptly exploded, laughing about how awesome it was to watch that happen. We still bring it up to this day, and laughs are always had. Story 24. My great-great-great-grandpa, Earl Boardman, created quick cake mix. He liked trying to invent things as a hobby. He was in his kitchen when he thought of an idea. Why not find a way to make a cake, needing only eggs and milk instead of an assortment of other ingredients? My grandpa invented easy quick mix in his kitchen, saw nothing of it, and gave it to his close friend, Marjorie Husted, and after seeing potential in it, stopped talking to my great-grandpa and founding herself as the inventor. A few years ago, my mom, whose side of the family the inventor belongs to, has tried contacting Betty Crocker Inc. just to get an honest certificate stating what we say is true. They won't talk, nor even acknowledge our... Growing up, I got teased when I told people the story, stating I was lying, but my family knows that it's true and have plenty of other high-credited achievements to look at instead of the missed opportunity for billions. Honestly, it doesn't really affect me much. But knowing that I could be a gagillionaire if my grandpa had simply patented the quick mix and had asked for shares in the company. But yeah, that's my story that literally no one believes, simply because my great-great-great-grandpa Earl didn't patent his shit. Remember that Earl Boardman invented that, and Marjorie Husted fucked him over. Story 25. When I was in middle school, there was this ham beast of a girl who bullied me constantly, even dragged me around by my hair once. Obviously, I hated her, but I couldn't do much with teachers, parents around, plus I was smaller than her. Anyway, I got her back at school camp. We went to this place with an archery range and log cabins, that sort of shit. Archery was my thing and I was pretty good. I stayed behind in the early evening to practice there by myself. The staff apparently trusted me enough. So I'm there by myself and Ham Beast is walking alongside the range and spots me, starts bellowing some racist shit at me. I tried to ignore her. I didn't think she'd come on the range while I was actively shooting stuff. She decided instead that hopping the fence was an excellent idea and told me she was going to beat my ass for ignoring her. At this point, she's maybe 100 meters away. I'm pretty pissed and scared at this point, but more angry because I was sick of her shit. I still had an arrow knocked and told her, "I will fucking shoot you in the face, go away." But of course, Ham Beast keeps charging. So I did shoot her and ended up taking off a chunk of her freaking ear. This scared the crap out of her enough that she ran off to dob me in, but nobody believed her, LMAO. Bitch never bothered me again. Story 26. I was up camping, canoeing with my old church group. It was probably the happiest time in my childhood. It was fun as hell being in a teenage group and camping, swimming and carrying canoes the distances between lakes. Well, one stop, I grabbed the toilet paper and latrine tool and took off to do my business. I saw a bright light and that's all I recall. They later had a search for me and I was on the other side of the small island then where I went. They thought I was playing a prank. I wasn't. I have no idea what happened and the tool and toilet paper were not found, and it was not a large island and we looked all over in the morning. Story 27. When I was little, probably about 4 or 5, my mom ran to the mall with my little brother, who would have been 1 or 2 at the time, and me. I think he was strapped in a car seat of some kind. We had a Chevy Suburban, late 80s, early 90s model. None of the windows were tinted as cars have now. My mom was just running in and coming back out, so she locked the truck and took off. I watched her run into the mall, and as she did, I noticed 2 people sitting on the curb near the entrance. As soon as she was inside, they got up and ran over to the truck. They tried all the doors. I recall very clear crawling over seats and watching them through the windows. All of them were locked, and as quickly as they came, they took off. My mom came back shortly after, and to this day doesn't believe me. I was pretty little, but firmly hold that this did happen. Story 28. I went saying something charming and funny, and one of the super hot bartenders thought I was cute or whatever. We shot the shit all night and ended up at the bar owner's house, in the hot tub, naked, with the other hot bartender chick too. We made out a little bit, but I ended up feeling guilty and went home early after my cousin got drunk and started making an ass of himself and passing out. This story tops my list on biggest sexual regrets as well. Story 29. It was back in 2009, May or so, during basic training in FT Jackson. We were finishing up a team-building obstacle course. Our platoon was the last to leave, and some cameras, lights, and a trailer rolled in, and this one soldier was in the middle of it all. He approached, thanked us for our service, high fives and stuff. We even did some push-ups with him, and he was making jokes left and right. We got to watch him bust his ass on the obstacle course and get yelled at by a drill sergeant. It was quite a laugh, and a few of us even got to help him out. Our drill sergeants were cool as heck with all the hilarity going on. I was thinking, man, we are going to smoked later. This has to be a test. Turns out it was Stephen Colbert filming his Army of Me tour. A few of us recognized him, but we couldn't believe it. He is in damn good shape and looked like a high-ranking officer. Story 30. When I was 15, my friend told me about how he shaves his pubes down below, and that girls liked that, so I thought I'd give it a shot. The only problem is, I didn't have a razor as I could barely grow any facial hair as of yet. So I borrowed my mom's bright pink razor and locked myself in the bathroom to get going. I had just sprayed myself all over with shaving gel and had just taken the first swoop when the door came flying open. The lock was on, but the door didn't close the whole way, as I frustratingly found out after. My mom stormed in with her pants half down, ready to pee, and looked at me in horror as I was awkwardly positioned over the toilet, hovering my crotch with her pink razor filled with my pubes. My penis hard because of the thought of what I was going to do with my freshly shaved privates. I was so embarrassed but had to finish. My mom waited outside the bathroom and told me when I exited, "Never use my razor again, please." We never spoke of it again, and I told my friends a while back, but they didn't believe me because my mom denies it. Note, she's a private, religious woman. It was embarrassing, but when I look back on it, it was super hilarious. Story 31. One summer I worked at a ranch with 4 friends of mine near the Abapa Indian Reservation, where my cousin owned a trading post. There was about a half-mile of dirt road from the store to the main road. On the road, there were some lines of tar, just like you normally see all the time on roads. A little way down the road, there were some 3 or 4 names written in tar. The only name I remember is George Cook's. George's name was written a second time, about half a mile down the road. One day, we decided to find out who George Cook's is. So we decided to start at the cemetery. We found one grave that had the name George C., that was an infant not more than 9 months old. We were pretty creeped out until we found another gravestone that had the name George C. Cooks, who was about 30 or so when he died. About a week later, everybody but me went home for one reason or the other. About 20 minutes after they left, I started burning boxes in the fire barrel. Keep in mind, I circled the barrel several times to make sure nothing outside the barrel would catch fire. Later in the day, the guys came back and joined me at the fire. One of the guys across from me pointed at the barrel and said, "Where did you get the tar for that?" Confused, I walked around to his side and saw it. On the side of the barrel was written in tar, "George," in the same style that was written on the road, in fine lettering like it was written with a Sharpie marker. I still can't convince them that it wasn't me, even though my handwriting sucks, and my cursive is even worse. Story 32. I was brought on stage for a Green Day concert to play drums. I dislocated my knee. Because I was trying to be cool and did a heel click, had to walk up a riser to the drum set. Knee buckled with every step. Got to the drums. Trey Cool and his drum tech were considered with the way I was hobbling and didn't want me to play. Billy Joe came back and asked what was the holdup. They told them I busted my knee. Billy's response into the microphone at a sold-out Bank Atlantic Center, 32,000 people, was, "Broke his fucking knee? Shake it off, man. It's time to play the drums." So I did. I played a cover of Knowledge by Operation Ivy with Billy Joe Armstrong and Mike Dirnt. At the end of the song, I did a drum fill, for which Trey called me an asshole. Then he remembered I was injured and helped me down the riser. I was taken backstage where the paramedics looked at my leg. Billy Joe's wife was there and was telling people to give me one of everything from the merch booth. The lawyers quickly moved her away, and I didn't get anything except the drumsticks I played with, which I lost, %. Then it was just me and a handler. She asks me if there was anything I needed. I look down the hallway, and I see Jim Atkins talking to some guy. Jimmy Eat World had opened, and I was a huge fan, so I asked, "Can I meet him?" She walked over to him, exchanged words, then came back. Her response was, "He said he would come by when he was finished talking, but in my experience, don't hold your breath." Then she left to get me a water, so I was talking to the paramedic that was hanging out with me, when to my right, Jim comes out of nowhere, puts his hands over my knee and exclaims, "Get out of him, Satan! Get out!" Laughs and asks what happened. I told him, "That fucking sucks!" Then walks away, pulls up a chair, and hung out with me for 30 minutes until the end of the show when the staff kicked me out. It was 2005. I was 20 years old, and it was the best concert of my life. Story 33. I was fishing in the canal in Ottawa, my hometown, Canada, and caught a strange, narrow fish with a reddish-pink underbelly. Normally, we, my brother and I, would catch the carp that are plentiful there. We had no idea what kind of fish it was, but decided to throw it back. 2 weeks later, the fish was discovered as a new species somewhere far away. I swear no one will believe me that I caught that fish before it was discovered. This was about 15 years ago. I don't remember the name of the fish, but I remember what it looks like. I can't find it on the internet, though. Story 34. I lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere when I was a kid. I was out doing my chores on Saturday. Weeks prior to this day, my mom came home with a Shih Tzu that was just out of place with our 2 Biggs farm dogs. One was half Rottweiler, half Lab, and the other a German Shepherd, and all the other animals. So as I was feeding chickens with my brother and my mom was tending the garden, I heard my brother drop his seed bag. Then my mom started to cry. I looked around confused when I see my brother and he points to the sky. As I look up, I see the little pup clenched in the talons of a golden eagle flying away in the distance. My dad came home from work later, and my mom told him the ordeal. He simply responds by saying, "I guess God really does answer prayers." Story 35. So I take my 5-year-old neighbor to a carnival at my old elementary school. Working the ring toss was Kristen, this super hot 19-year-old girl who used to flirt with me in the 6th grade. We haven't seen each other since we were 12 because she and I went to different high schools, but we immediately recognize each other. The ring toss game looked like this. It had about 100 2-liter Coke bottles. 20 of them were painted blue, 5 were painted red. Kristen and I did the preliminary, "Hi, wow, haven't seen you since forever" thing, and I'm pretty dumbstruck with how gorgeous she turned out. Ryan, the 5-year-old kid, is tugging at me to play the game. He wants me to win him something. "Not now, Ryan. I'm trying to flirt with this girl." But he was persistent. Finally, I give in. I hand Kristen $3 for 5 rings. These rings were small, like the rings in the photo. The inner diameter is only barely bigger than the neck of the bottle, so it's nearly impossible to get them to stick. They're also made of some super light space-age plastic, so they bounce like a motherfucker. Getting any one ring on a blue bottle wins a small prize. Getting any one ring on a red bottle wins a casually. They fly perfectly flat, no wobble, and the first ring nails a red bottle dead center of the hole. I've won. Then, at that very moment, every planet in the universe happens to fucking align. My 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th ring all land on the exact same bottle. As each one landed, the next was already in the air. It was like I couldn't even be bothered to aim, like I didn't even give a shit where they were going. All 5 rings landed on the exact same red bottle within the span of maybe 4 seconds. Even better, the entire time I'm throwing them, I'm making direct eye contact with her. Kristen's jaw hits the fucking floor. Ryan pisses himself with glee. A feeling of superhuman power rockets through me like a lightning bolt, and for above 5 long seconds, none of us can even speak. "What do I get?" I ask, when I can finally talk again. What do you want?" Kristen stammers, looking up at me totally starstruck. At that precise moment, I am a demigod. Now, here's the part of the story where I now realize I could have said absolutely fucking anything, and it would have been granted. I could have asked her out. I could have asked for her phone number. Hell, I could have probably grabbed her around the waist, pulled her close, and planted one right on her lips. There was not even a question. But instead, I said the 7 most regrettable words of my entire life. "I'll take that Ninja Turtle right there. The blue one," Ryan chimes in happily. And just like that, the window of opportunity slams violently shut. With trance-like slowness, Kristen reaches up and hands this kid a giant stuffed Leonardo doll. My heart sinks. The moment has passed. She collects the rings from around the neck of the 2-liter bottle and smiles as we wave goodbye. I shuffle across the gym in bitter disappointment, ready to ram my head into the concrete wall until Ryan pulls me in the direction of the balloon game. "Kristen, I love you. We could have been something. I'm sorry." Story 36. Coming home drunk with a few friends late at night, while waiting for the subway to come, we took turns going to the end of the platform to piss behind a maintenance closet. First guy goes, comes back and says, "There's something strange back there." Second guy goes, comes back and says, "Yeah, there's a something big wrapped in a garbage bag." When I walk over by the closet, I see something large wrapped in multiple garbage bags and tied up with duct tape. When I look down, I saw the cuffs of some dirty pants and sneakers sticking out from the bottom of the bag. I was pretty drunk, but I had enough sense to realize that I was looking at a dead body. As the 3 of us were discussing what we just found, a nearby homeless woman overheard us. Needless to say, we were freaked out and got the hell out there. Story 37. I had a sleep paralysis moment when I was sleeping on my futon. I was sleeping across from the kitchen, and I saw a black, shadowed figure. It came around the counter and into the living room. It then proceeded to pick me up. Now, at this point, I thought it was the dream, but I could feel my back being touched and picked up. I woke up, and I felt myself hit the futon as if being dropped. I woke up scared, and my dad didn't believe it happened, and people still don't believe it when I tell them. Coincidentally, the apartment number added up to the number 13. Story 38. When my older brother and I were kids, about 12 and 7 respectively, we went to play in an open field and found some thin PVC pipes to sword fight with. They were about 1 inch in diameter by 4 to 6 feet long. Things got really crazy in our play fight with pretend wire fu and fireballs when we jumped away from each other like in any martial arts anime battle for the final attack. We stared each other down for a clean 5 seconds, and then my bro winds his arm like a baseball pitcher, lead leg raised up and everything, and hurls his weapon like a spear at my head. I remember hearing the whistling noise from his weapon as I tightly shut my eyes and reflexively raise my sword in front of me like a samurai, when I hear a loud snap and my hands felt like I just slapped a concrete wall really hard. I open my eyes and see his plastic javelin split right in half and laid on either side of me on the ground. Not only did I block the thrown weapon, but I also managed to break it right down the middle. My hands were ringing from the impact, but neither of us were hurt, and we freaked out about how cool that was. Moments later, my bro commented that I was really lucky, and we were convinced I must have had a guardian angel that day. Weeks later, we sword fought again with plastic baseball bats, and I managed to smash the ceiling light, and the glass cut and scarred my arm. My angel must have face-palmed and left for some smarter kids. Story 39. I was playing paintball at an outdoor field with like a trench maze sort of thing. I was out, so I was watching the last couple guys play. One of the last dudes on my team stood up, and I saw a guy across the field shoot at him from behind a bunker. Dude knelt down and caught it by his head with his fingers like the fucking Matrix, put it back in his gun and shot him with it. Nobody has ever believed me. Same place a similar thing has happened. Someone brought one of those paint grenade things and threw it into a trench, but it didn't go off, so they picked it up and whipped it back at him as hard as he could and got him pretty good. Story 40. I went fishing in the Florida Everglades with my father and a guide when I was 7 years old. I still had this little blue Snoopy fishing pole because the adult ones were too big for me. I caught a huge bass. A fucking alligator I've ever seen, period, came swimming in from the left. It went for the base, and our guide had to rip his hand away from pulling it into the boat to prevent losing it. The gator took the fish and thrashed around trying to pry it from the line for over a minute. I had to hold the pole because my dad was too busy taking pictures and yelling, "Holy fuck Jesus Christ!" The line finally snapped and the gator swam off. We got home and told everyone. They said we were full of shit. We tried to develop the film, but my mom loaded it in backwards before we left. Came back with no pictures at all. Sadness eternal. Story 41. I evaded the blue turtle shell in Mario Kart. It was on Jungle Parkway early on the course. There's a loop that ends in a large ramp that launches you over the river and over the ferry, where you land and need to take a hard left. I got the warning sign of an incoming blue turtle shell right as I came to that ramp. My options were brake immediately and take the hit as soon as possible, or go for broke and hope I made it to the ramp in time so that it'd be lost as I went over the river. I opted to brake, but not in time, and hit the ramp, which automatically launched me. The blue turtle shell stopped when I hit the brakes though, and blew up right behind me as I launched off. I'll never forget that, and will never replicate it. Story 42. July 5th. Probably 6 years ago now, my friends and I were shooting off some extra fireworks. I live on the north shore of Long Island, right on the Sound, which is pretty hilly, so we had about 1/4 to a half-mile walk on the side of a sand dune cliff thing to a clearing where we could shoot the fireworks. For some context, this is a narrow path with some small brush on the left, with about a 100-feet drop-off and deep woods to the right. The area on the right of the trail is the woods before the state park, that must be 2-3 miles deep at least. It's about 3 a.m., and we're done with the fireworks and start walking back. So now the beach cliff is on the right, and the deep woods is on the left. All of a sudden, we hear some ruffling of leaves sticks in the woods. Okay, whatever. Plenty of deer in the woods, no problem. We take maybe 10 more steps, and we hear the same noise again, except now it's much closer. We all shut the fuck up and pick up the pace a little. 20 feet later, the sound is right on top of us, and a man, probably in his 50s, it was tough to tell, all we had was our cell phones to light up the path, steps out right in front of us. The man is in a brown pinstripe suit with a matching top hat, a black briefcase, and those kind of glasses that Roosevelt wore. He then said, "Well, good evening, boys. How are you tonight?" We hauled ass and never looked back. I have no idea what the guy was doing, but it still terrifies me to this day. Story 43. The thing about this story is that I don't know if it is real either, as I only pieced together the pieces of it later on, and the realization hit me. It's not that big of a deal, but I think I learned to play Dungeons & Dragons from Scott Ramsoomer and some of his web artist friends. It was the first PAX, 2004. I was 16, I think. I had gone with a friend, but by now we had long ago lost each other. The first night I stayed up in one of their PC free play areas all night playing Battlefield 1942 non-stop. Did not sleep. Second day I was exhausted, but I ate several handfuls of chocolate-coated espresso beans that someone with a huge bag was just handing out to everyone, and had a power nap at some